Spider-Man 2000 may very well be the first video game playing experience that blew my mind as a child. It was the ultimate gaming event for fans of the web-slinging, wall-crawling hero that featured a unique story, action-packed levels, and overwhelming objectives that always kept you fully engaged. While playing through this game serves as one of my favorite childhood memories, playing through the sequel, Enter Electro, serves as one of my biggest childhood disappointments, and truthfully as a kid, I didn't have the patience to play through the entire game and quit halfway through. After sitting through a couple reviews by gamers who remember it differently and consider it to be a somewhat more enjoyable game than I did, I've decided to give it another go with an adult perspective and a little more patience to see if there was anything I was missing and to see if I was maybe always a little too harsh on this one. I've always wanted to enjoy this game because it's the only other Spider-Man game that exists in this fashion. It features the same graphics, the same mechanics, and same addictive gameplay style as the first. However, all these elements are underutilized when taking on far less interesting objectives, often darker, grungier, and less colorful or less appealing looking environments, and all for the purpose of serving a pretty basic and uninspired story revolving around lesser known villains who are also underutilized. Every which way you look at it, this feels like a big step down from where it started with the first game. I'll admit that had this been the only PlayStation 1 era Spider-Man, I might have found it a little more amusing, but it's not. It's a follow-up to a masterpiece, and what's frustrating is you want it to be good, you wish it was more ambitious, and replaying it now as an adult, I'm searching high and low for its redeeming qualities, but I'm struggling to find any. In the original, Spider-Man is framed by an imposter, which makes him an enemy of the state police. The city streets are flooded by a mysterious fog, and every villain you can think of from the comics is out and about causing mayhem in New York City while the police are more concerned with finding Spider-Man. It's an epic piece that makes for a thrilling ride beginning to end. In Spider-Man 2, Electro is going around the city committing a series of robberies in his efforts to obtain technological devices that could further his powers, such as the BioNexus device. Your mission is to follow him around and attempt to stop him through a series of monotonous tasks that hardly utilize Spider-Man's full capabilities, or if they do, they aren't used for anything all that interesting. And coming off the excitement of the first game, the absence of our favorite villains and interesting obstacles are felt heavily. First of all, I want to be thrusted right back into the middle of the action when starting this game, but instead we start off with Beast from the X-Men showing up to bring you up to date on how to follow your spider compass and makes you follow him to be sure you know how to use it. Like I didn't just use the spider compass to complete the entire first fucking game. It's like the hazard room from Sly 3. Why do games feel the need to bring you up to speed with how to use certain functions in the sequels, but not the original? Like, I know how to do this shit, I don't need tutorials. Then we're off to beat up some bad guys and roll around the city streets looking for fire hydrants to put out fires, and you can even use your webbing to put out fires. Great, should we save a cat from a tree next? This time around the controls are a tad less responsive, and I often find myself swinging left or right when I'm trying to swing straight ahead. Now the bad guys have activated a bomb I need to disarm, and I have to search around the city looking for 4 keys needed to do that. Like, come on, rolling around searching for keys, that's what we're doing? And that's all you're doing, roaming around. The bad guys are holding the keys, so you retrieve a key by beating them up. That's simple enough, but you have to search high and low for these bad guys by just aimlessly roaming. It's boring. Then we have a plane that's out of control. It's your objective to move boxes out of the path of the plane and open doors so the plane doesn't crash into the doors. You get a boss battle with Shocker in a burning building, which is maybe the first sort of redeeming moment, but most of the time you're fighting a ton of aimless enemies who are all trying to jump you at once, and I'm just really unamused so far. Here we are with this sort of top-down view, and the objective is to go around destroying these machine guns and beat up any of the bad guys that get in your way. Not the least enjoyable task in the world, but it already feels like forever since I've encountered another character or villain from the comics that I'm familiar with. I'm just taking out these aimless, faceless goons. Now, by this point, I've already gotten farther into this game than I did as a kid, so what's next to do? Well, we're back to some more wandering, this time wandering around the train yards, looking for switches that get the trains moving. By this point, I'm so bored, I'm skipping through the cutscenes, so I have no clue how this relates to the plot, I don't know what Spider-Man's trying to accomplish, and I don't really care because none of this has come close to entertaining me yet. I had high hopes for the Sandman battle, but personally, I'm not really a fan of the objective to both try to catch a train while fighting Sandman and while taking down walls of sand he puts up to prevent you from catching the train. I know it might have been a little basic to just square up with Sandman, but I'm just not really feeling this. Now we're freeing hostages in a building like the first level of the previous game. You fight Hammerhead, who charges at you and blocks your punches with his gun while an armed chopper shoots at you as well. It isn't long after that until you're back to wandering around looking for switches switches and buttons to press that unlock doors, shut down security, and unlock pathways for you to make your way through a level and get to your next boss, and this is the majority of what you're doing in the entire game. It's not like the first game didn't have its fair share of downtime like this, but Enter Electro feels like it has all the downtime of the previous game, but none of the action. It's not like it's a game worth hating, it isn't painfully bad. Matter of fact, I don't know that I'd say it's bad at all. It just drags like a motherfucker and ultimately is more of a puzzle or more of a thinking game than an action-adventure experience, and that's not what I was led to believe it was going to be considering the previous adventure, so that's about it for me. I'm quitting again. I can see up ahead we have a fight with the lizard that looks cool, maybe another fight with Sandman, and your final moment with Electro, of course, but I've sat through enough. Now, you could say why speak on a game you didn't complete, but it's like reviewing a cigar you didn't smoke all the way down. You die out a cigar once it loses its flavor, and if that's at the halfway point, that sums up the experience. I'm halfway through, and I'm not enjoying myself, so why keep going? I honestly can't believe this game exists for the purpose of being a game with the same graphics, same cutscene style, same mechanics, and same music, but offer an experience so much less exciting than the original. Now, I don't know how many of you remember the PS1 Spider-Man games, but I remember Spider-Man 2000 as a standalone game, and forget, oh yeah, there was a sequel, wasn't there? It's like Grease 2. Yeah, there was a sequel to Grease. Who remembers, and who gives a fuck? Maybe some folks enjoy Enter Electro. I'm assuming those folks weren't looking for it to be an action-adventure epic, and enjoy the thinking tasks of wandering around looking for switches and ways to advance through the levels, and that's fine if that's their thing, but I personally was, and still am, let down. This is not my cup of tea, and with so many other exciting choices on the PlayStation 1, this is not one I recommend in terms of getting your money and time's worth. It's just not that exciting.